Hey everyone, my name is Jason, and today we're going to be talking about character conflicts. Yes, character conflicts. It's going to be doing with character arcs and conflict stakes. So strap in! The key to a satisfying arc is the conflict resolution, and there are four main types. We've got man versus self, man versus man, man versus society, and man versus nature. Now first off, you can see that these are kind of sexist, so we're changing that. Much better, but still not quite right. I still don't like it. They're not quite for me. These are a little antiquated, so let's update them. First one, versus self. We're gonna let's open it up a little and talk about the personal conflict. The personal conflict deals with the internal struggles, the want versus need, the character aspects that they fight with either by holding them or letting them go. The versus other, the interpersonal. This is the one where I kind of think a lot of stories live. It's one individual versus another individual, and then they kind of duke it out. Always fun. But it also deals with their own group, their allies, their people who are kind of about them. What aspects of conflict are involved with there? And you have a lot of options. If basically the hero gets along with every single person in their group, that's kind of boring. If there's only conflict with the group, then why are you even there together? So there needs to be that kind of balance. Third one, versus society. That's okay, but not everything is societal. There are certain... it's very limiting. So I call it the extrapersonal. Extrapersonal conflicts deal with society, yes, but it also can deal with much more broad range of topics like power structures, systemic poverty, racism, sexism, communities big and small, the human condition. Basically bigger than a smaller group of people, if that makes any sense. And the last one, again, it limits the scope about what you can really talk about from just the surface of it, so we're going to change it to the inevitable. This is things that cannot change, that are going to happen, that are happening, and the characters have to learn to deal. And that can be very incredibly compelling, not just in the kind of disaster flick or dystopian or anything like that, but it can also be things like disease and death. Basically, it should be something that no human hand can turn aside, which can be very compelling in the fact that, okay, well, this is going to happen, so here we go. Or it can be kind of a narrative cheat and go, oh, this can't happen. Oh, it totally happened. Oh, well. Ideally, there should be a bit of each of the conflicts within the story that gives a good round out, keeps it from being too monotonous about the one thing that you're focusing on, and just adds a bit of spice of life to the whole thing. Incredibly important is that each of the conflicts that are set up, they must be narratively complete. They must resolve in some satisfying fashion, even if it's kind of not the one we want. Like someone who's fighting, deep down the demons in their souls, like, you know what, screw it, I'm doing demon. That's not what we thought would happen. That's not generally what happens with heroic characters, but it is a resolution. They have fully committed to what they are going to be. The most frustrating thing is when you set up a conflict and it completely disappears. I mean, like, we were set up, we're invested, it's part of the plot, and all of a sudden it just dies on the vine. That's not great. You have to be very cognizant of the conflicts that are being set up so they don't just kind of fall flat and disappear. And circling back to the character arc, the main characters need to have a little bit of each. To deal with, especially the protagonist and the antagonist. But I'll cover that later. That was weird. So that's conflict. I mean, that's all that needs to be said, right? Not really, because conflict in and of itself doesn't really mean anything. You need to have something to propel it. Threats and consequences. The conflicts must have stakes to them. The level of conflict depends on what is at stake. And between the four conflicts, there's a lot of overlap. Like, you can have an inevitable that deals with a single person or an entire society. You can have a personal conflict that affects the relationships with each other within the group or against the protagonist. You can have a conflict about someone feeling in their place in society, which deals with, do they want to become the person that fully integrates with that society or the one that rebels against it? For stake to be really valid, to really stick in the reader's mind as, oh yeah, this is a thing that's important, it has to have four things. First off, a solid reason. This is here because of, and it can't be contrived kind of, oh yeah, because it can't be weak tea. It has to be resonate. Especially if it's a central conflict. It can't just go, oh yeah, well that, and then a throwaway line. No, it has to be integral to the plot. It has to mean something. Second thing, consequence for an action. It is entirely possible that a character just has the option just to not. I mean, they're prophesied to be the one or whatever. That trope. We'll get in that in a later episode as well. Could they just decide to not? What happens? What happens if they don't? Does the world fall apart? Does it pass to someone else? But there has to be some sort of significant consequence to the characters for not. Does a loved one get hurt? That kind of stuff. Number 3, there has to be a genuine risk for failure. Even if they set out to do the thing, there is every chance, and probably better than even odds, they're going to screw it royally one way or another. And that has to be there. And the consequences for that have to be well established and go, yeah, well, he could not, but then there's that, and then he could, and then there's that. That's fun conflict. And lastly, number 4, and this goes more for the subplots than anything else, is it has to have relevance to the story. It has to have some way impact in a meaningful way to the central conflict. Like if a love interest is just kind of there and it's tacked on, and if it can be taken out of the story at all, then get rid of it. It's superfluous. Red herrings are not fun unless that's kind of the book you're writing, which is fine. Just be aware that it's going to be very frustrating for people because they don't want to sit there reading about this whole thing, get emotionally vested, and then not do it at all. Or if you have a subplot that is relevant, but they've already been subdued by another red herring, they're afraid to get invested with it, and then you just lose all impact. And so with those stakes, you can create compelling conflict and weave them throughout the course of your story, and you will have readers enthralled. The stakes also need to be raised throughout the course of the story, but that's more of a plot arc, and I'll get into that to another video. But needless to say, they can't just stay the same, become more of what is already there. They need to change, they need to adapt, they need to become more compelling for the character, offer greater risks, and eventually, I don't know. We'll have to see. Thank you all for your viewership. We're going to call it viewership. Thank you all for your viewership. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you have any comments, questions, critiques, don't forget to leave those in the comments. And crap. It just says pithy sign-off line. I'm not very good at this.